I was elbow deep in the engine of my '87 Mustang when I heard Elena's BMW pull into the driveway. The familiar purr of German engineering mixed with the sound of expensive heels clicking across concrete. I didn't look up from the carburetor I was rebuilding, hadn't looked up much at all since she'd returned from her business retreat 3 days ago. "Hey, stranger," she called out, her voice carrying that forced cheerfulness she'd perfected over our 15 years of marriage. "Still playing with that old rust bucket?" I wiped my hands on a greasy rag and finally turned around. Elena stood there in her power suit, briefcase in one hand, phone in the other, looking every inch the successful attorney she'd become. Beautiful as ever, with that sharp intelligence in her green eyes that had first attracted me back in college. But something had changed in those eyes over the past few months. Something cold and distant. "Just keeping busy," I said, matching her fake smile with one of my own. "How was your day at Morrison, Klein & Associates? Any interesting cases?" She shrugged, already walking toward the house. "The usual corporate nonsense. I'm exhausted. Think I'll take a hot bath and turn in early." I watched her go, noting how she avoided eye contact, how her shoulders tensed when I mentioned her law firm. Elena had always been a terrible liar, which made her recent transformation into a master of deception all the more impressive. After she disappeared inside, I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd been building for the past 2 weeks. Screenshots, bank statements, credit card records, hotel receipts. All the breadcrumbs she'd left behind during her 14-day retreat with her colleague Mark Patterson. Mark Patterson. Even his name sounded like something out of a soap opera. Senior partner at the firm, divorced, drives a vintage Porsche 911 that probably costs more than I make in 2 years. The kind of guy who wears Italian suits and talks about wine pairings at dinner parties. I scrolled through the evidence on my phone. The hotel in Napa Valley where they'd supposedly attended a legal conference, except the conference had been canceled 2 months earlier. The romantic restaurant receipts for 2 people. The photos Elena had posted on social media, carefully cropped to hide her companion, but showing just enough background for me to piece together their itinerary. The final piece had come yesterday when I'd hacked into Elena's cloud storage. I'm not proud of it, but 15 years of marriage and a background in industrial engineering had taught me enough about her habits to guess her passwords. What I found there made my stomach turn. Text messages. Hundreds of them. Elena and Mark planning their getaway, discussing hotels, sharing intimate details about their relationship. The worst part wasn't the explicit content, it was the casual way they discussed me. "David's so clueless," Elena had written. "He actually believes I'm working late all those nights." Mark's response: "Poor bastard probably thinks you're reviewing contracts instead of reviewing my anatomy." Their laughter came through even in text form. They thought I was pathetic. A blue-collar project manager married to a high-powered attorney, too stupid to notice when his wife was cheating right under his nose. They were wrong about the stupid part. I closed the phone and looked back at the Mustang. My father had given me this car when I turned 16, and I'd been restoring it ever since. Elena always called it a waste of time and money, but working with my hands helped me think. And right now, I needed to think very carefully about what came next. The old me would have confronted Elena directly, would have demanded explanations, begged for another chance, maybe even suggested counseling. The old me believed in honesty and communication and working through problems together. But the old me hadn't seen those text messages. Hadn't watched his wife of 15 years mock him with her lover. Hadn't realized that the woman he'd built his entire adult life around viewed him as nothing more than a convenient fool. The new me had different plans. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I pulled up Mark's contact information on my phone. Finding his address had been surprisingly easy. Attorneys love putting their credentials and office locations online. He lived in a luxury condo downtown, the kind of place with a doorman and valet parking. The kind of place Elena probably dreamed about while she was stuck in our modest suburban house with me. Tomorrow was Saturday. Elena would sleep in, then spend the afternoon at her book club, or at least that's what she'd tell me. Mark would probably be home, maybe nursing a hangover from whatever wine bar he'd visited the night before. I smiled as I gathered my tools. Elena thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. She had no idea I was about to flip the entire board. The first rule of project management is simple. Identify your objectives, gather your resources, and execute your plan with precision. I'd spent my career managing complex industrial projects, coordinating teams, solving problems that others couldn't handle. This was just another project, a very personal one. I headed inside, where Elena was already in the bathroom running her bath. The sound of running water covered my footsteps as I walked to our bedroom and opened her laptop. She'd left it logged in. another sign of how little she suspected. Her calendar showed a client meeting tomorrow afternoon, but I'd already checked the firm's weekend schedule. No one would be working, which meant she'd be with Mark, probably at his place, probably celebrating another successful deception. Perfect. I closed the laptop and headed to my workshop in the basement. If Elena wanted to play games, I'd show her how a real strategist operated. She thought she held all the cards because she made more money, had more education, moved in more sophisticated circles. But she'd forgotten something important about me, something that had attracted her in the first place, back when we were young and she was impressed by my ability to fix things, to solve problems, to make the impossible happen. I was very, very good at my job, and my job was about to become making Elena Patterson regret every single choice she'd made over the past 6 months. The water stopped running upstairs. Elena would be settling into her bath now, probably texting Mark about their plans for tomorrow, maybe laughing about something clever she'd said to throw me off the scent. I opened my toolbox and started selecting what I'd need for tomorrow's project. This was going to require precision, timing, and a complete understanding of my target's weaknesses. Fortunately, I'd been studying those weaknesses for 15 years. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical weather for October in Ohio. Elena was still asleep when I left the house at 8:30, ostensibly heading to the hardware store for supplies. Instead, I drove straight to Mark's building downtown. The Meridian was everything I'd expected, all glass and steel, with a uniformed doorman who looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog. I parked across the street and settled in to wait, a cup of coffee in one hand and my phone in the other. Mark's Porsche sat in the valet area like a monument to midlife crisis. Cherry red, pristine condition, probably worth more than my annual salary. The kind of car a man bought when he wanted to prove something to the world, or to steal someone else's wife. At 10:15, Mark emerged from the building wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. Even on weekends, the man looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. He said something to the valet that made them both laugh, then slid into his precious car and pulled into traffic. I followed at a distance, my beat-up Ford pickup blending invisibly into the morning traffic. Mark drove like he owned the road, cutting between lanes without signaling, tailgating anyone who dared drive the speed limit. The kind of driver who'd never worked a day of manual labor in his life, never had to worry about missing work because of a traffic ticket. He pulled into the parking lot of an upscale grocery store in the suburbs. Through my binoculars, I watched him load his cart with expensive wine, imported cheese, fresh flowers. Preparing for a romantic afternoon with my wife. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Book club running late today. Don't wait up for dinner. Book club. Right. I texted back. No problem. Working on the car anyway. Love you. The lie came easily now. I'd been practicing. Mark finished his shopping and drove to a wine bar called Vintage, where he met 2 other men in expensive suits. Probably other partners from the firm, maybe divorced guys living the bachelor lifestyle Mark was sampling on the side. They ordered a bottle of something that probably cost more than most people's car payments. I didn't need to get close enough to hear their conversation. I could imagine it perfectly. Mark bragging about his latest conquest, maybe showing them photos of Elena, describing in crude detail what it was like to seduce a married woman, the kind of locker room talk that successful men thought they were entitled to. While they celebrated, I drove back to Mark's building. The valet was on a smoke break, and the doorman was helping an elderly resident with her packages. Security cameras covered the entrance, but the parking garage was a different story. I'd spent enough time on construction sites to know that parking garages were always the weak point in building security. Too many blind spots, too many ways in and out, too many people coming and going to track everyone effectively. Mark's parking spot was on the 3rd level, right where the valet had left his precious Porsche. I pulled on latex gloves and got to work. The first step was simple vandalism, but with a creative twist. I'd brought a can of expanding foam insulation, the kind we use to seal gaps in industrial buildings. A few strategic applications to the exhaust pipe would create some interesting problems when Mark tried to start his car later. Next came the interior work. I'd stopped at a seafood market on the way over and purchased several pounds of the most pungent fish I could find. Carefully distributed under the seats and in the air vents, they'd create an aroma that would linger for weeks. The final touch was a note, written in block letters on plain paper. Cheaters always get caught. This is just the beginning. I was back in my truck and heading home within 20 minutes. Mark was probably still at the wine bar, toasting his cleverness with his friends. Elena was probably at home, getting ready for their afternoon together, maybe trying on different outfits to see which one he'd prefer. Neither of them had any idea what was coming. I spent the rest of the morning in my workshop, preparing for Phase 2. Elena's laptop was still logged in, and her calendar showed the fake client meeting at 2 o'clock. That gave me 3 hours to set up the next surprise. The beauty of modern technology is how much information people volunteer about themselves online. Mark's social media profiles showed his daily routines, his favorite restaurants, his weekend habits. Elena's showed her growing distance from our old friends, her new interest in expensive wine and art galleries, interests that aligned perfectly with Mark's. They thought they were being discreet, but they were actually broadcasting their affair to anyone who knew how to look. I created a new email account and sent a message to Mark's ex-wife, whom I'd found through public records. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, and according to the court documents, she'd cited irreconcilable differences. But the settlement suggested there had been more to it than that. "Thought you might be interested to know that Mark is up to his old tricks," I wrote, attaching several of the photos I'd found showing him with Elena at various restaurants and hotels. Some people never learn. Then I sent a similar message to the managing partner at Morrison, Klein & Associates. Law firms took ethics violations seriously, especially when they involved partners having affairs with subordinates. It might not end Mark's career, but it would certainly complicate his life. By 1:30, Elena was getting ready to leave. She'd chosen a black dress that I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, paired with heels that she claimed hurt her feet, but made her legs look amazing. She was dressing for Mark now, wearing our memories as costumes in her new life. "I should be back by 6, she said, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably been kissing him all week. "Don't wait up if you get tired." "Have fun at your meeting," I replied, not bothering to look up from my newspaper. "Hope it goes well." She paused at the door, maybe sensing something different in my tone. But then her phone buzzed with what was probably a text from Mark, and she hurried out without another word. I waited 10 minutes, then followed. The drive to Mark's building gave me time to think about what I was really doing. The old me would have been horrified by this level of deception and manipulation. The old me believed in honesty, in working through problems, in giving people the benefit of the doubt. But the old me had been a fool. The old me had trusted his wife completely, had never questioned her late nights or weekend meetings, had actually felt guilty for the occasional moment of suspicion. The old me had built his entire identity around being a good husband, a loyal partner, a man who kept his promises. The old me was gone now, replaced by someone harder and smarter and much less forgiving. Elena's BMW was already in the visitor parking area when I arrived. Through the building's glass facade, I could see her in the lobby, probably calling Mark to let her up. She looked nervous, excited, guilty, all the emotions of someone living a double life. I parked where I could watch both the building entrance and the parking garage exit. Then I settled in to wait for the real show to begin. Mark would discover his car problems when he tried to take Elena somewhere romantic for the evening. The smell would hit them as soon as they got in, and the engine trouble would strand them in the garage. They'd probably call a tow truck, maybe argue about whose fault it was, definitely wonder who could have done such a thing. But that was just the opening act. The real performance would begin when Mark's ex-wife and his boss started asking questions about those photos. When Elena realized that their secret wasn't as secret as they'd thought, when they both understood that someone was watching, someone knew, someone was playing a much deeper game than they'd imagined. My phone rang. Elena's number. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice tight with stress. "I'm going to be later than I thought. This client is really demanding." In the background, I could hear Mark's voice, though I couldn't make out the words. "No problem," I said. "Take all the time you need. I know how important your work is to you." She hung up quickly, probably eager to get back to her afternoon of adultery. But I could hear the strain in her voice, the first crack in her confident facade. The game was just beginning, and I was already winning. By Monday morning, the first cracks were showing. Elena came down to breakfast looking like she hadn't slept well, her usually perfect makeup unable to hide the dark circles under her eyes. She kept checking her phone, frowning at whatever messages she was receiving. "Everything all right at work?" I asked, buttering my toast with deliberate casualness. "Fine," she snapped, then caught herself and forced a smile. "Just some office drama. You know how it is?" I knew exactly how it was. Mark's ex-wife had apparently made good use of those photos I'd sent her. According to the gossip sites that tracked local legal news, she'd filed a motion to revisit their divorce settlement, claiming he'd committed fraud by hiding assets and relationships during their proceedings. Meanwhile, the managing partner at Morrison, Klein & Associates had scheduled a meeting with Mark for this afternoon. Officially, it was about maintaining professional standards and avoiding conflicts of interest. Unofficially, word was already spreading through the legal community that Mark Patterson was in trouble. Elena's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. "I have to go," she said, grabbing her briefcase and heading for the door. "Don't know when I'll be home tonight." She was gone before I could respond. leaving her coffee untouched and her breakfast half-eaten. The woman who prided herself on control and composure was starting to unravel. I finished my breakfast and drove to work, where I had my own drama to manage. As a project manager at Hartwell Industrial, I was used to putting out fires and solving complex problems under pressure. But today felt different. Today, I was the one creating the problems instead of solving them. My assistant Jennifer knocked on my office door around 10. "There's a woman here to see you," she said. "Says it's personal." Mark's ex-wife was younger than I'd expected, probably mid-30s, with the kind of understated elegance that comes from old money rather than new success. She introduced herself as Catherine Patterson and asked if we could speak privately. "I wanted to thank you for those photos," she said once Jennifer had closed the door, "and to let you know that you're not the only one Mark has hurt." She opened her purse and pulled out a thick folder. "I've been documenting his affairs for 2 years. Your wife isn't his first, and she won't be his last. Men like Mark see marriage as a challenge to overcome, not a commitment to respect." I studied the photos she showed me. Mark with different women at different restaurants, hotels, vacation spots. Always the same pattern: expensive locations, married women, elaborate deceptions. Elena was just his latest conquest in a long string of victories over other men's marriages. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Help," she said simply. "Mark destroyed my life because he thought he was untouchable. Rich, successful, charming. Who would believe a bitter ex-wife over a respected attorney? But now there are 2 of us. 2 people who know what he really is." She left her contact information and copies of some of her evidence. After she was gone, I sat in my office staring at the photos, understanding for the first time that Elena wasn't just cheating on me. She was being used by a predator who'd perfected the art of destroying marriages. That realization should have made me feel sorry for her. Instead, it made me angrier. Elena was smart enough to see through Mark's act if she'd wanted to. She'd chosen to believe his lies because they made her feel special, desired, worth more than the ordinary life she'd built with me. My phone rang. Elena's number. "David, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "Can you come home for lunch? Is everything okay? Just, please, I need to see you." I found her in our living room, still wearing her work clothes but looking disheveled in a way that was completely unlike her. Elena had always been meticulous about her appearance, using her professional image as armor against the world. "There are some rumors going around about me at work," she said without looking at me directly. "Nasty gossip about my relationship with Mark Patterson. I wanted you to hear it from me before someone else told you." I sat down across from her, keeping my expression carefully neutral. "What kind of rumors?" "People are saying we're having an affair." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "It's ridiculous, of course. Mark and I work together on several cases, and I guess some people have misinterpreted our professional relationship." "Have they?" She looked at me then, searching my face for signs of suspicion. "Of course they have. David, you know me. You know I would never—" "I know you've been working late a lot," I said quietly. "I know you went on that retreat with him. I know you've been different lately." "Different how?" "Distant, like your mind is somewhere else. Someone else." Elena's composure cracked slightly. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. The rumors are poisoning everything, making you suspicious of me when you should be supporting me. I'm the victim here, David. These people are trying to destroy my reputation because they're jealous of my success." It was a masterful performance. Elena had always been good at turning defense into offense, making herself the wronged party in any conflict. If I hadn't seen those text messages, hadn't watched her lie to my face for months, I might have believed her. "What do you need from me?" I asked. Relief flooded her face. "Just trust me. Ignore whatever gossip you hear and trust that I'm telling you the truth. Can you do that?" "Of course," I said, reaching over to take her hand. "We're a team, Elena. We always have been." She squeezed my fingers, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I'd married, the one who'd believed in us, in our future together, in the life we were building, but then her phone buzzed with another message, and the moment was gone. "I have to get back to work," she said, already standing. "This crisis isn't going to manage itself." After she left, I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by 15 years of shared memories. Wedding photos, vacation souvenirs, the accumulated debris of a life built together. Elena was fighting to preserve her double life, to keep both me and Mark, to have her cake and eat it too. She had no idea that I was 3 steps ahead of her, that while she was scrambling to contain one crisis, I was already preparing the next phase of her education. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to every partner at Morrison, Klein & Associates. The subject line read, ethical concerns regarding Mark Patterson and Elena Morrison. In the body, I laid out everything I knew about their affair, complete with documentation, photos, and a timeline of their deception. I explained how they'd used company resources for personal trips, how they'd violated the firm's policies regarding relationships between partners and associates, how their behavior had created a hostile work environment for other employees. Then I scheduled the email to send at 9 a.m. tomorrow, right before the weekly partners meeting. Elena thought she was fighting rumors and gossip. Tomorrow, she'd learn the difference between speculation and evidence. She'd discover that her carefully constructed professional life was just as vulnerable as her marriage, and she'd begin to understand that the husband she'd dismissed as clueless and pathetic was actually the most dangerous opponent she'd ever faced. I closed the laptop and went back to work on the Mustang. The engine was finally running smoothly, all the parts working in perfect harmony. Unlike my marriage, this was something I could actually fix. But destruction, I was learning, could be just as satisfying as repair. The email hit Morrison, Klein & Associates at exactly 9 a.m. Tuesday morning, just as I'd planned. By 9:30, Elena was calling me in hysterics. "David, something terrible has happened," she sobbed into the phone. "Someone sent lies about me to everyone at the firm. Horrible lies about Mark and me. They're saying we've been having an affair, that we use company money for personal trips. It's all fabricated, but they're taking it seriously." "Slow down," I said, though my heart was racing with satisfaction. "Who would do something like that?" "I don't know. Maybe Mark's ex-wife, or someone who's jealous of my career. But David, they've suspended me pending an investigation. They've frozen my access to cases, my email, everything. 15 years of work, and they're treating me like a criminal because of some anonymous gossip." Anonymous, if only she knew. "I'm coming home," I said. "We'll figure this out together." I found Elena pacing our kitchen like a caged animal, her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke in urgent whispers to someone, or probably Mark. She hung up when she saw me and collapsed into my arms. Her professional composure finally shattered completely. "They're destroying my life," she whispered against my shoulder. "Everything I've worked for, everything I've built. Gone because of lies and rumors." I held her while she cried, stroking her hair and whispering soft reassurances. Part of me, a small fading part, felt genuine sympathy for her pain. But the larger part, the one that had been growing stronger since I uncovered her betrayal, felt only a quiet, cold satisfaction. "What did Mark say?" I asked. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "He's suspended too. They're treating him even worse because he's a partner. The managing committee is talking about forcing him out entirely." "Maybe that's for the best," I said carefully. "If there are rumors about you two, some distance might help clear the air." Elena's eyes flashed with something that looked like panic. "It's not that simple. Mark and I have worked together for years. We have cases pending, clients who specifically requested our collaboration. Separating us now would hurt both our careers. Even if it saves your marriage." The question hung in the air between us. Elena stared at me, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew or suspected. Finally, she looked away. "Our marriage isn't in danger," she said quietly. "Is it?" "That depends," I said, "on whether you're telling me the truth about Mark." "I've told you." "Elena." I kept my voice gentle but firm. "I'm not stupid. I've seen the way you look at your phone when you think I'm not watching. I've noticed how many late nights you've been working, how many weekend meetings you've had. I've seen the credit card statements for restaurants I've never been to, hotels I've never stayed at." She went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you're having an affair with Mark Patterson, now would be a good time to tell me, before I find out some other way." For a moment, I thought she might actually confess. Her face cycled through a dozen different emotions: fear, guilt, defiance, calculation. But in the end, she chose to double down on her lies. "I can't believe you'd accuse me of something like that," she said, her voice hardening. "After 15 years of marriage, you think I'd throw it all away for some office romance? You think I'm that shallow, that selfish?" "I think you're human," I said. "I think Mark is charming and successful, and he makes you feel things that maybe I don't anymore. I think you got caught up in something that felt exciting and new, and now it's spiraling out of control." Elena studied my face, looking for signs of what I really knew. "And if I was, hypothetically, what would you do?" "I'd want to know why," I said honestly. "I'd want to understand what I did wrong, what we could do to fix it. I'd want to fight for our marriage instead of just watching it die." She softened slightly, maybe hearing the genuine pain in my voice. "David, Her phone rang. Mark's name appeared on the screen, and just like that, the moment was broken. She looked at the phone, then at me, torn between her two worlds. "Answer it," I said. "He's probably scared too. You should support each other through this crisis." She answered on the fourth ring. "Mark? Yes, I told him about the suspension. No, he doesn't. What do you mean, more evidence?" I watched her face strain of color as she listened to whatever Mark was telling her. Her free hand gripped the kitchen counter so tightly her knuckles went white. "How is that possible?" she whispered. "We were so careful. Okay, yes, I'll meet you. The usual place." She hung up and turned to me with desperate eyes. "I have to go. Mark found out who's been spreading these lies about us. We need to figure out how to fight back." "Elena," I said as she headed for the door, "whatever's happening, whatever you've done, we can work through it. But only if you're honest with me." She paused with her hand on the doorknob. For a second, I thought she might finally tell me the truth. Instead, she said, "I love you, David. Whatever else happens, remember that I do love you." Then she was gone, leaving me alone with the wreckage of our conversation and the satisfaction of knowing that Phase 3 was about to begin. I'd given her multiple chances to confess, to come clean, to choose our marriage over her affair. She'd chosen Mark every time. Now she'd have to live with the consequences of that choice. I opened my laptop and began composing the next round of emails. This time, the recipients would be Elena's book club, our neighbors, our old college friends, everyone in our social circle who still thought of us as the perfect couple. The subject line read, "The truth about my marriage." In the message, I laid out everything: the affair, the lies, the elaborate deception Elena had been maintaining for months. I included selected text messages between her and Mark, photos from their trips, documentation of their betrayal. I wrote it in a tone of hurt bewilderment, like a man who just discovered his wife's infidelity and needed support from his friends. "I don't know how to process this," I wrote. "The woman I've loved for 15 years has been living a double life, and I feel like a fool for not seeing it sooner. I'm not writing this for sympathy, but because I can't bear the thought of pretending everything is normal when my world has been turned upside down. I scheduled the emails to send at 6 p.m., right around dinner time when people would be checking their phones and sharing the news with their families. By tomorrow morning, everyone we knew would understand exactly what kind of woman Elena really was. She'd built her entire identity around being successful, respected, admired. She'd cultivated an image of having it all: the perfect marriage, the brilliant career, the enviable lifestyle. In a few hours, that image would be destroyed forever." My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine Patterson. "Saw the news about the suspensions. Well done. Mark's attorney called this morning about settling our revised divorce case. Apparently he doesn't want this getting any messier." I texted back, "Just getting started." And I was. Elena and Mark thought their biggest problem was the professional consequences of their affair. They had no idea that their personal lives were about to become just as complicated. I spent the rest of the afternoon in my workshop, preparing for the final phase of Elena's education. She'd made her choice. Now she'd learn what it really cost. The emails sent at exactly 6 p.m., just as Elena was meeting Mark at whatever usual place they'd established for their secret rendezvous. I imagined them huddled together in some coffee shop or hotel bar, trying to figure out who was targeting them and how to salvage their careers. They were asking the wrong questions. The real question was whether they'd still have each other when everything else fell apart. My phone started ringing at 6:15. First my brother-in-law Tom, then our neighbor Mrs. Henderson, then Elena's college roommate Jessica. Word was spreading through our social network like wildfire, and everyone wanted to know if the story was true, if I was okay, if there was anything they could do to help. I played the role of the devastated husband perfectly, shocked, hurt, but trying to be mature about the whole situation. I didn't badmouth Elena or Mark directly. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself, and people could draw their own conclusions. "I just want to understand how this happened," I told Jessica, who was crying on the other end of the phone. "Elena and I had problems, sure, but I thought we were working through them. I never imagined 15 years of marriage. Doesn't that count for something?" "Oh, David," Jessica sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I can't believe Elena would do this to you. You're such a good man. You deserve so much better." The calls continued until almost 9 p.m. when Elena finally came home. She walked into the house like a woman facing her execution, her phone clutched in her hand and her face streaked with tears. "You did this," she said without preamble. "You sent those emails to everyone we know. You destroyed my reputation, my friendships, my entire life. How could you do something so cruel?" I looked up from my newspaper, the picture of calm reasonableness. "I told the truth, Elena. That's all I did." "The truth?" She laughed bitterly. "You aired our private business to the entire world. You humiliated me in front of people I've known for decades. You turned me into the villain in some twisted revenge fantasy. You made yourself the villain, I said quietly. I just documented it. She stared at me, and I could see her finally understanding that the man she'd married, the predictable, loyal, easily manipulated husband, no longer existed. Who are you? She whispered. I'm the man whose wife has been cheating on him for 6 months, I replied. I'm the man who's been lied to, deceived, and mocked by the person he trusted most in the world. I'm the man who finally decided to stop being a victim. Elena sank into a chair, her defiance crumbling. David, please. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I got involved with Mark when I shouldn't have. But did you have to destroy everything? My job, my friends, my reputation? Was that really necessary? Was destroying our marriage necessary? I countered. Was lying to me for 6 months necessary? Was planning a future with another man while pretending to love me necessary? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. How do you know about what? About the apartment you and Mark were looking at downtown? About the vacation you were planning for Christmas? About how you told him you were going to ask me for a divorce after the holidays so you wouldn't ruin your family gatherings? Elena went pale. Those details had been in some of the more recent text messages I'd found, conversations about their future together once they'd both extricated themselves from their current situations. You've been spying on me, she said accusingly. I've been trying to understand why my wife became a stranger, I corrected. Do you want to know what hurt the most? It wasn't the affair itself. People make mistakes, marriages go through rough patches. It was how you talked about me to him, how you laughed at me, mocked me, treated me like some pathetic fool who deserved to be deceived. Tears were streaming down her face now. I never meant for you to see those messages. We were just venting frustration. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything, I said. It showed me who you really are when you think no one's watching. And it showed me that the woman I loved, the woman I built my life around, doesn't actually exist anymore. Elena wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. So what now? You've had your revenge. You've destroyed my career and turned all our friends against me. Are you satisfied? Are you going to keep seeing Mark? The question caught her off guard. What? It's a simple question, Elena. Now that everything's out in the open, now that you don't have to sneak around anymore, are you going to keep seeing Mark Patterson? She looked away. It's complicated. It's really not. Either you want to be married to me, or you want to be with him. You can't have both anymore. Mark and I need time to figure things out, she said carefully. With everything that's happened at work, with the investigation and the suspensions, we need to see how that resolves before we make any major decisions about our personal lives. I nodded slowly. So you're choosing him. I'm not choosing anyone right now. I'm trying to salvage what's left of my career and my life. Your life with him? She met my eyes then, and I saw a flash of the old Elena, the ambitious, calculating woman who'd climbed her way up in a male-dominated profession by being smarter and tougher than everyone around her. Yes, she said simply. My life with him. At least she was finally being honest. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet suburban street. The neighbors were probably all talking about us right now, sharing the gossip, taking sides, wondering how they'd missed the signs of our marriage falling apart. There's something else you should know, I said without turning around. Mark's ex-wife has been documenting his affairs for years. You're not his first conquest, Elena. You're just the latest in a long line of married women he's seduced and discarded. That's not true. Catherine Patterson has photos, receipts, testimony from other women. Mark has a pattern, and you fit it perfectly. Successful, married, vulnerable to attention from a powerful man. He probably used the same lines on you that he used on all the others. Elena's voice was small when she spoke. You're lying. I turned back to face her. Call Catherine and ask her yourself. Her number is in the phone book. Or better yet, ask Mark about Rebecca Chen or Amanda Foster or Jennifer Walsh. Ask him how many other marriages he's destroyed for sport. The names hit her like physical blows. I could see her recognizing them, probably remembering Mark mentioning them in passing, maybe even meeting some of them at firm events. He loves me, she whispered. He loves the chase, I corrected. He loves the challenge of taking something that belongs to someone else. But once he has it, once the excitement wears off, he'll move on to the next conquest, just like he always has. Elena stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. You're just trying to hurt me because you're angry. I'm trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life, I said, But if you want to learn the hard way, that's your choice. She headed for the stairs, probably to pack a bag and leave for Mark's place. At the bottom of the staircase, she paused. "For what it's worth," she said without looking back, "I really did love you once, before everything got so complicated." "I know," I replied. "That's what makes this so tragic." She went upstairs, and I heard her moving around in our bedroom, opening drawers and closets. 20 minutes later, she came back down with a suitcase and her laptop bag. "I'll be staying at Mark's until we figure out what comes next," she said. "My lawyer will be in touch about separation papers." "Elena," I called as she reached the door, "when this all falls apart, and it will, don't come back here looking for forgiveness. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned." She looked at me one last time, her face a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. Maybe some bridges deserve to be burned. Then she was gone, leaving me alone in the house we'd shared for 15 years. I walked through the empty rooms, looking at all the pictures and mementos of our life together. Tomorrow I'd probably take them down, pack them away, start the process of erasing Elena from my daily existence. But tonight, I just sat in my workshop and worked on the Mustang. The engine was purring now, all the parts working in perfect harmony. It had taken months of patient work, careful attention to detail, and a willingness to replace the broken pieces that couldn't be repaired. Some things could be fixed. Others had to be rebuilt from scratch. And some things, like my marriage to Elena Morrison, simply had to be allowed to die so that something better could take their place. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about your wife. If you ever want to grab a beer and commiserate about cheating spouses, give me a call. Mike, Catherine's brother." I smiled and saved the number. Maybe it was time to start building new relationships instead of mourning the old ones. Elena had made her choice. Now I was free to make mine. The Mustang's engine hummed in the background as I began planning the next chapter of my life, one that didn't include a cheating wife or the wreckage of broken promises. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future.